Okay then peeps, so we'll take a look at the system as it's built up. Now we've got it in our custom 540, and it's been, yes, the outside is custom, but the most important thing is the inside has been done so it illuminates all the parts nice and bright, so that we can see everything. It highlights the motherboard quite nicely, and we've chosen the white fans on purpose because it then adds extra colour down in, and it all just kind of helps. And that's why when we zoom in like this, we can see all the nice highlights around the top of the red heat sinks, which is going to be a surprise for quite a lot of you, because we've got the G1 name, and the G1, the killer, the sniper, it was all kind of, in the past it's all been about the green, which is why it's quite a big deal that we've got that GeForce GTX graphics card in there. And it would have predominantly in the past all kind of tied in together because it would have been green. Now I can understand why Gigabyte want a black and red range, but I think it's a little bit of a mistake that it all now seems to be red. But that's something I do want to talk to you about in the conclusion. But so forgetting about the G1 bit and the sniper, let's just treat it as a black and red motherboard. The fact that the heat sinks are just red with the little bits of black over the top does kind of separate the design away from the MSI and the Asus designs, because they're more predominantly black heat sinks with a little bit of red on them. So this is the opposite way round altogether. There's a lot more red on these, and that's both for the MOSFET heat sinks at the top and that chipset heat sink at the bottom. So it's up to you whether you like them or not. Now, I like the colour of the heat sinks, I'll give them that. But when we zoom in, if I zoom you right in, I'm going to move it, but I'm not too keen on the actual heat sink design itself. It feels, I know this is going to sound wrong, but it doesn't feel very modern. It's almost like they're 2 or 3 years old. I think they could probably have got a better design put together for these, and if I was to kind of move this out the way so you can see it. Oh, there's my fingers. There's people laughing all over the internet now. But if we move that out the way, they just don't seem like they've put a massive amount of effort into them. I love the colour and what they've done. It's just the same that the design of them isn't a little bit nicer, really. And it's not just because this is the cheaper end of the spectrum for them, because this board's only going to be 112 quid in the UK. The rest of them further up the range pretty much are identical to this as well, and I think that's a bit of a letdown, really. Also, if we follow down here, we can't see a lot of it, and to be fair, you don't particularly want to, because this heatsink I really don't like. You've got the extruded aluminium underneath, and then they've just wrapped something over the top. The problem is that eye. Now, for me, I understand a lot about the Gigabyte branding and the way their corporation and everything separated out, but that eye is from the graphics card division, and any of the professionals out there are going to know how separate the motherboard people are from the graphics card people. Now, like I said, the eye is part of their graphics card side of things, and I don't particularly think that it deserves to be on the motherboards themselves. I think the motherboard people or the motherboards need their own brand. But here's my other problem is that logo looks far too much like the Gigabyte logo looks far too much like the Big Brother eye. And normally once I say that, you can't unsee it. It is kind of like turned around. So if I was to pick the camera up and go like this, you can see the eye, and it is very Big Brother eye. So right, putting the tripod back down. But you're probably never going to be able to unsee that. But also, and this is the thing that I am not really, because obviously I have to take a lot of things into account. Now also, the eye, very, very similar to the ROG eye. So not only have we got red designs, but now we've got an eye being brought over from the graphics card side of things on. So it's all feeling very mimicky. And like, the way Chinese companies, they take, say for argument's sake, all of the good stuff in the world and they try and make their own versions of it. It's all starting to feel a bit like that, and it's like, oh, we haven't got any like inspiration or any kind of like thoughts of our own, so we're just going to copy everybody else, when really they were already on to such a winner with the green. And the problem is now is all of the brands. We're going into too much about the black and red, so I'm going to leave it. Right, so we've got the audio separation line down the side. That again, I really like. We zoom in and it all focuses in. It does really look the part, and I properly love the focus on my camera now. Even if we do keep messing the audio up, but we'll fix that. If we move down, you can see that we've got the amp up cover there. The jack caps, those little gold audio capacitors there. It does actually look really nice, and keeping in mind that this is a £112 board, it doesn't look that bad. It's pretty damn good. But the one thing, and I was wondering whether anyone has already kind of said about it while we move the camera around, is that, and it's the fact that it's actually not full width ATX. Now that happens a lot with the lower end boards. All of the manufacturers do one or another like that. Gigabyte, the HD3 or whatever they're called now, their one was always ever so slightly thinner. That's only really going to be a problem with a case like this where you've got that really large CPU cutout. But if you want to try and conceal it, you could always have put your cables up through this to kind of make use of it that way. Other than that, there's not really too much to differentiate from it. I would have liked to have seen some, like, even if it was a very, very basic power switch or something on there. But again, we're asking for a lot from such a cheap board. It's got all of the essentials on there that you would want. There's a lot of fan headers, and if I was to go like this and zoom out a little bit, we've got two up here on the CPU. There's one there for a system fan. And if we go down a little bit more, there's another two at the bottom. We've got one there and we've got one there. The layout for the graphics cards is great because there's 3 slots between the PCI Express. So we've got a dual slot card in here. This one would not be populated, but if we were to put another graphics card in, it would fill up these 2 slots. So you end up getting a slot between the 2 graphics cards. So that's a great deal of help. We have got some legacy stuff on here for any of you out there that have still got some archaic hardware that you really should be looking to get replaced. And then we've got another PCI Express at the bottom. Now this PCI Express at the bottom is wired as a 4-lane. The second one here for the graphics card is wired as an 8-lane. So that's something that you do need to keep in mind. Also keep in mind that the fact you've not got an endless amount of PCI Express lanes on the chipset. So if you're starting to think about adding extra graphics cards in and using the M2 slot, which is here, or the SATA Express, because the M2 or the SATA Express, you can only use one or the other. But also something to critically remember is if you use either of those, they actually use 2 PCI Express lanes to find all that bandwidth. So that if you're thinking about multi-core graphics cards and all that kind of stuff, you could start to get to a point where you might be running out. But anyway, so that's enough of the looks. I do want to talk to you more about the aesthetics of the board and the colouring and stuff in the conclusion. I do have to tread carefully about the way I say, talk about that type of stuff though, because it's quite a personal thing for me, and it's more the fact from my point of view, it's about the branding. So we'll talk about that. But anyway, what we'll do now is we've got the spec 4770K. We've got 2933 memory in there, which we'll talk to you in a minute about, but we did all of our tests with 2400 memory, which we're going to be doing throughout. So we've got 2400 memory that we will do the tests on, so you can click on the bottom of the corner and go and have a look at all the results and all the benchmarks and everything on the OC3D website. But that in there at the moment is 2933, which we'll talk about with some BIOS stuff in a minute. That is a GTX 780 Ti. It's a shame that it lights up green, not red, isn't it? But anyway, and then we've got the motherboard in there, and the PSU and everything is all hidden around the back. But deep breath, it's time for us to move on. So moving on to the overclocking quickly, as you can see on the left, 1.258 volts, that's 1.26 in the BIOS. We did get our 4.9 gigahertz overclock, as we would expect. But then what we did also manage to do afterwards was get the 2933 running, which is the max of our memory. That's 2933 at its rated But the thing was, is the 4.9 on the other side, even before the memory, wasn't 100% stable, which is why in the main review our results are based off of a 4.8 gigahertz clock. We did try increasing the voltage to try and stabilise it, but something that we're starting to notice a little bit now is if we can't get it stable at 4.9, it's generally like a board stroke BIOS issue, which is something that will probably get sorted out in the not too distant future. The fact that we could also get that 2933 running at the same time is pretty epic, actually. Something that I do have to point out is a lot of people are going, oh, 4.89 gigahertz overclock with all that memory, it's all cherry picked. But the thing is, the reason why we're pointing this out is we've been working with this CPU for a long time. And the Z97 does seem to have allowed a much higher memory clock than we were able to get before. But also, not all of the boards at launch were able to get that 2933 running. So the fact that we've got those two together is still a big positive point that does need bringing up here. The only slight negative was we couldn't get the 4.9 running for all of our benches. There was a couple ones that it was falling over on, so we do what we always do, and we then went back to 4.8. We kept it at 1.26, and that was all fine. What we'll do now is we'll go and have a look at the BIOS, because there's something in the BIOS that I just want to show you, just to kind of help clear something up about the way that the XMP works. It's a little bit confusing, and it's something that the other boards aren't doing anymore, but the Gigabyte one has kind of stayed with the old way of doing things. It's something that I think that they should look at getting sorted out. Okay then, Pete. So when you go into the Gigabyte BIOS now, this is the view that you get. This is their kind of their basic version of it. It's the graphical one with the you know, you can use your mouse and everything, and you've just got click options, and then you just, there we go. So you've got those basic options there, and you see down here you've got the other options that you can with the F numbers, and if you press F2 you get the BIOS that we're all used to, which is great. Got all the bits and bobs in there, but something that the thing that I did want to mention too is when you go into advanced memory settings, you can see here that we've got profile 1 for the XMP. Now, if you, the way that I have shown you to do stuff with overclocking guides and the like in the past, is you set your CPU up for an overclock with 1600 megahertz memory, 999, 24 timings, and then you get your overclock to its stable limit, and then you go back and you work your memory settings up gradually. Well, if you on the other manufacturers, if you hit XMP, it basically adds the memory timings onto the settings that you've already saved. So if you've got a 4.8 gigahertz overclock saved in the BIOS, then you hit XMP, it just adds the memory settings on, so it brings your memory settings up to what it should be, sets the timings, and that you have it. But the Gigabyte one, when you enable the XMP, it actually starts off with the CPU afresh again. It's like starting a brand new profile. So you then have to go back in and manually set all your CPU timers and all your overclocks again. So it's just something to keep in mind, and it's something that would make it a lot easier if you could just turn that on and off, and it didn't necessarily reset all your CPU and everything. As you can see, we've got it in there running at 2933, and then we come down and you can see your memory timers down here, 12, 14, 14, 36, command rate at 2, so it's set all that for us. The rest of the stuff that we've got is essentially voltages, but I can show you the frequency stuff. Although we will go through this in a much more in-depth rate, because we're probably going to be doing a lot more videos on this and showing you how to set them all up properly. But that's with the 4.9 all set up. Just to kind of reiterate things, if this was one of the Gigabyte Z87 boards with this CPU, the 4.9 would have been stable. We have tried tweaking things around, we just couldn't get it running. So it could just be an early BIOS in the fact that they still need to do a little bit more tweaking, but it's not really going to matter because we should have Devil's Canyon out in not too far in the future, so we should find out pretty soon. But if you're used to this kind of BIOS, I went straight to this to get everything set up. Everything's where I was expecting it to be, and you don't really have to think too hard about it. You've got all your voltage settings, advanced power settings, there we go. Don't forget that's V-ring load line, not the CPU load line. There isn't a CPU LLC on there, and to be fair, it doesn't need it either because it doesn't droop at all. So they've done very well with this. in the fact that it does stay so level. One of the other manufacturers that I made a review on recently, the load line calibration was so overrated, it was actually pushing the voltage right up. But this is all lovely and stable, and that's a really good point for Gigabyte as well, because it's something that they've struggled with at launch in the past. So the fact that the LLC is so strong, just even that just says to me that with the instability issues, it's just a few little tweaks that I need to do so everything's kind of set up and running right. It could even be early chipset drivers or something really silly like that. Because the problem was I couldn't get the overclock stable, whether it was on 1600 memory or higher memory. So it's definitely something CPU stroke chipset related. But anyway, we'll see in the not too distant future anyway. So I'm going to stop boring you with just showing you BIOS screens, and we'll move on. Okay then peeps, so I've spoken to you about the overclocking, and I've shown you a bit on the BIOS. We've seen all around about the layout of the board and the fact that we've got this upgraded audio on there. It's quite, you've got, considering it's one of the boards from down the lower end of the spectrum, there's a lot of stuff on there. If you want to see any of the benchmark stuff, click on the link and go to the OC3D website. Because obviously where we couldn't get it running at 4.9 gigahertz, which pretty much all of the other boards did, it's affected the results. And the results in our graphs, this board was pretty much at the bottom of them, only ever so slightly just behind, but enough where we've not got a lot of results for Z97 yet. This is one of the ones that's fallen at the back, but it's obviously also the cheapest one that we've looked at so far. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the a few of the positive things and stuff about the boards first, and then we're going to talk to you about the other kind of things, kind of expanding on a point and maybe even get into some of my own personal thoughts about stuff. But the award that we're going to give is the Gamer's Choice Award, because at the end of the day, the board still does perform relatively well. You get a fair bit that on the board is like standard equipment for the price, which is just £112. And don't forget, this is still at launch, so the prices are more than likely going to end up slowly progressively going down as well. But for 112 quid you still do get a lot of board for your money. You wouldn't have got all of this equipment a couple of years ago for 150 quid, let alone 112 quid now. So things are moving along nice. We've got the M2, we've got the SATA Express, the good memory support there because of Z97. We've also got the upgraded audio. The upgraded audio, don't think about it as a replacement for a dedicated sound card. It's kind of a stopgap between the two. So it's not like the old school just onboard audio. It's a step further towards a dedicated graphics card, but it's not as it's not as good as even for argument's sake a reasonable £40 add-in, dedicated add-in card. Right, so the benchmarks, they weren't disappointing, they just weren't screaming off into the distance, but we know why. It's because we couldn't get that 4.9 gigahertz stable. The memory results were about on par of where we would have thought with the other boards, as obviously the memory results don't necessarily tie in with the CPU overclocks. So the memory performance was there, that was all very good. It was just the stuff that was CPU specific wasn't that great. The gaming though, the gaming was exactly on par with the other ones, and I do mean exactly on par. They were like frames a second in it, and I think it was Hitman that was actually a little bit quicker. So in the real world usage of it, it actually performed really well. And it was those gaming results, the fact that they were the same as all of the other boards, is the reason why we gave it the Gamer's Choice Award. And we do actually believe that long term, that once they have a few BIOS revisions and things get tweaked and sorted out and everything's kind of settled in, things will be much better. It could also be a much different kettle of fish when we start talking about Devil's Canyon, which at the end of the day is what all of this stuff has been designed for anyway. So we just need to wait a little bit longer, chuck those results in, and we'll be able to see the difference between Haswell and Devil's Canyon, and then that'll all be lovely bubbly. So that's why it got Gamer's Choice, because at the end of the day it is perfect for a gamer. If you're looking for a black and red board that is maybe not following the norm of the other black and red companies, then you've got something you've got a little bit more red there, a little bit more red there, the red all down the sides, it's all lovely bubbly, and that low price comes in all as well. Right, so I'm going to sit right in front of the camera and I'm going to try and remember to stare the camera straight down the eye as well. Ooh. So I have recorded this and I'm recording it again because I did end up going off on a little bit of a tangent and I made it a little bit too personal. So we're going to talk about the black and the red. Now I can understand why Gigabyte need a black and red kind of theme or range of motherboards, and that so that they do have something in that colour coordinated market. But my problem is I think it's a massive oversight for them to get rid of the green altogether. If you go and Google NVIDIA theme system or something online, most of them will end up having Gigabyte boards in. Last year the Z97 Sniper that they brought out, which was 110 quid, £109 it even may have been, which was a low end kind of budget end of the market, still had all the audio. It was very similar to this, but just had a black and green theme. It was a brilliant board. But the problem is now what they've done, I keep looking at the screen in case you wonder my eyes are going all over the place. That's the screen and that's you, and that's the screen and that's you. Gigabyte, essentially what they've done is we've got this gaming range that's black and red, but also the G1 snipers and the assassins and all that type of thing that we've got used to, they are now black and red as well. Now the boards are so similar, unless you actually know what you're looking for and you just scan up them quick, you'd think that they have very, two boards available at almost each price point, and it is very confusing. And for me, that should have been, even if it was that slightly more expensive board, that should have been the green one. So I am talking about this as like I don't want to make it sound too personal, and it is very Gigabyte corporate aimed at and all that type of thing, but it's just got to the point where I think it's quite a shame that they've got rid of that brand identity. And that's the thing that I'm talking about here. It's brand identity. It's them standing out from everybody else. Everyone else has got a black and red fucking motherboard, and it's like, yes, okay, I understand where you might want one or two well-priced black and red boards, and that's fine. But also the problem is they've carried on that black and red theme right the way up into quite an expensive price point. One of them, the Sniper Black Edition with the water cooling and stuff on it's £250. And I actually personally worry that once they get up to that price point, they're going to struggle to be able to sell that black and red board in the same sort of numbers that they might have done if it was green or just black. Because when you start talking about the black and red theme, there's obviously the instant one that we all think about, and it's it gets to a point where it's going to be, is your brand going to be strong enough to sell something in that marketplace? It's just another black and red board, and to be honest with you, they don't even look that nice. They certainly, apart from they've got water cooling on, the heat sinks don't make them look like they're that expensive. Obviously, I don't know, I'm not talking about the performance and stuff, but to me, just to look at the board and go, oh, and then they go, oh yeah, it's 250 quid, and I'm like, what? Are you jesting? And that's the bit where I'm worried. And I think they could have, if you're going to try and dip your toe into that humongous black and red market, you can't be mediocre. And that's almost the kind of thoughts that I've got around it. They needed to come in with a massive bang and then be the best thing since sliced bread. These have just got some heat sinks on them, and there's nothing that special about them, which is a bit of an oversight, I think. The old black and green boards, they were brilliant because there wasn't anything out there that you could really compare them with, and if you didn't have much of a choice. So I think for Gigabyte, I think that you do need to hurry and get yourself a black and green board out quick, because at the moment these current black and red ones are not standing out enough that I can see them really selling that way. I could be proven completely wrong. I'm basing this on, if this was my own wallet in my hand, which is here, if this was my wallet and it was my pound notes in it, I don't think that these shout at me loud enough. I personally want to buy them. You'd have to be kind of one of those people that are like, oh no, I'm definitely not going to buy that company and I'm not going to buy that company. Or you're just the type of person that's like, I'm only ever going to buy Gigabyte. I don't think if you had the choice of the three that you would kind of want to go down these road. Now that's going to get me in a lot of problems and probably get me in a lot of trouble. But that's my kind of feelings behind it. And it's more the fact that I'm worried about that's the way you guys are going to think as well. So that's why I'm kind of like, why? And there's been times when, you know, I've done Gigabyte builds and stuff here, and you can do black and green so nice. It's a bit of a brave choice, but you can do it so nicely. And I just think that they've kind of lost their way a little bit. And whoever decided to do all these, you know, oh no, we're going to have 2 separate ranges and they're both going to be the same colour and both look so identical that you can't really tell between them. Whoever's idea that was, they need to be sacked and just sent off and forgotten about. Get back to what you were doing best, because otherwise the next thing that's going to happen is the overclock boards are going to be red as well, because let's face it, that's the only product in their range at the moment that stands out as being different from everybody else's. Is, you know, those. They've even brought the bloody gold in now, and they've got gold in the ranges. It's just like, it's almost like this year, whoever the bloke that decided the colours and stuff, it's almost like all he's done is gone, oh, that worked for them last year, so we will copy that. And that's pretty much how it looks to me, but most importantly, that's how it's starting to look to everyone online as well. Because I did think long and hard before making this segment of the video, because of obviously I work really closely with the UK guys and they are brilliant blokes, and this is aimed at, you know, well above their heads, because this is nothing to do with them. This is kind of me going, what the fucking hell are they doing? Maybe I should have made this as a video on its own, but you know, the thoughts and the emotions, they needed to come out. And this is just me. I'm going to nail it on to right at the end of the video, and we'll see, you know, where it goes from there. But they need to kind of almost like get brave again, really, because that orange board is brilliant. Everyone knows what it is when you look at it. You show the orange board, you know that's a Gigabyte overclocking board. If it's shown a black and green board, everyone knew it was a Gigabyte G1 board or a Gigabyte gaming board. You show anyone this, and you're going to have to look, and you'll have to look to see the name on it to find out, because it could have been one of the others. And that's the problem. It doesn't stand out enough. It's too close to the other stuff. It's almost like they're happy just kind of picking up the sales that the other companies didn't get for whatever reason. And I think that personally is quite worrying and wrong, and I don't think that's ever going to work out well for a brand long term. So again, that's all of these thoughts are mine in my head about the brand identity rather than the product itself. The product itself works well, it's well priced, doesn't particularly look very nice, but if you want to get funny, and we all do now, we are much more conscious about aesthetics, you are going to end up getting a little bit worried about that black and red. Is that a big jet or is it thundering? I don't know. But anyway, so I've recorded it separately. I'm going to stick it after the you know, the intro, and we'll let you kind of think. If you have opinions on this subject, comment. Most importantly, get on the OC 3D forums, because I know Gigabyte are going to end up looking over this. So it's going to swing one way or another. I'm either going to end up getting in a lot of trouble, or we may end up being able to persuade them that they've made a bit of an oversight and they need to start rethinking some of these thoughts. And I think really it's one of those times where you could say it's power to the people, and if enough of us stand up and go, come on, please don't fucking copy everybody else. Yes, we wouldn't mind a couple of cheap black and red boards, but we'd also really like you to stay to your guns and keep knocking out those epic black and green motherboards, because they were fucking brilliant, and you were the only ones that made it, and you were the ones with the big kahunas. Bring them back. Bring them the fuck back! Anyway, I'm going to grab my remote. I've had enough. I've bored you with enough of my time. I apologise about my my ranting and the like, but for now at least, this is Tiny Sam Logan with another video for you. Out.